Good afternoon, and welcome to Behind the Scenes Filmmaking in Detroit, a webinar brought to you by Pure Michigan Business Connect and powered by Crain Content Studios Detroit. Let me introduce today's presenters. First, we have Selam Ghirmai. She has worked for the Michigan Film and Digital Media Office for over 5 years. She specializes in building strategic partnerships and promotions to grow and support the creative industry in Michigan. This includes organizing resources and contacts at the city, county, and state level to assist studio and independent film and digital media projects being produced in Michigan. Adrian Tonon is the founding director of customer service for the city of Detroit. Adrian serves many roles within city government. He currently leads Mayor Duggan's film, music, and nighttime economy initiatives. George Constas is a producer, location manager, and scout in Detroit. He is a location manager on Comedy Central series Detroiters. He has also worked on Lost River, Red Dawn, Real Steel, The Time Traveler's Wife, The Dark Knight, and many others. Sultan Sharrief is a filmmaker, educator, and social entrepreneur. His directorial debut film, BRoll, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2010. He's also produced 2 other feature films, Muslim and Destined. His show, Street Cred, featuring Detroit youth, will premiere on PBS this fall. I'm Laura Kassar, Crain's project manager and your moderator. Today's webinar will be 60 minutes, including a question and answer that we think will take up about half of the time. You can submit a question at any time by typing it in the question field on the screen. We hope to get to all your questions. In addition, if you're having technical issues with watching this presentation, please send those questions along as well. We have tech help on standby to troubleshoot. And now, it's time to talk about movie making in Detroit. Selam, let's start with you. Can you tell us what the Michigan Film and Digital Media Office does and how you help filmmakers?
Absolutely. So we thank everyone for joining us on this webinar, and I want to give a special thanks to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and our colleagues at Pure Michigan Business Connect, as well as Crain, for sharing this platform to talk about how we're doing economic development for the creative industries. Specifically to the Michigan Film Office, what a lot of people don't know is that the office has been around for over 30 years. And we've been selling Michigan for just about that time, but primarily we've been selling Michigan based on locations. We all know the diverse locations that we can boast, everything from the fact that Michigan can do small town America to cosmopolitan cities. Our lakes can double for oceans. So wonderful assets to sell Michigan on, just that Michigan already inherently has. We all also know that in 2008, incentives landed, and that was part of a national trend, and it brought major studios to town, such as productions like Oz the Great and Powerful and Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. It also brought amazing independent productions like It Follows, which showed at Sundance and has gotten rave reviews. I think one notable publication called it one of the best horror films done in the last 10 years, along with other great indie productions, and we're really proud to have filmmakers and producers like George and Sultan on the line, who have also worked on many of those wide range of productions. And I know when we talk about that nationwide trend, our instinct is to talk about incentives. But what we would love to talk about today is what is our long game. We know we don't have incentives, so what our office is doing is really actively building a new toolbox to support artists as creative entrepreneurs. Let me tell you a little bit about the toolkit we already have in place that's been around for a while. We have a production directory where crew and vendors can sign up for free to market their services to production companies and filmmakers. It's a great resource for filmmakers in town and also from out of state to plug into the local creative industry and staff their crew, and also secure vendors and goods and services from local vendors. So it's a two-way street with the production directory, and we're really proud of that database that, again, you can sign up for free to use it, and also to market your services. We also have a really great locations directory where your Joe or Jane Public and you want to list your private property for filmmakers to view as a potential location site, you can do that there. We also sponsor festivals, and we're really proud to support festivals as really a great tangible, event-based place for the creative community, not only for filmmakers but also patrons and movie lovers to join to support the creative industries. And then we also have a newsletter. It's on our website at www.michiganfilmoffice.org, where if you're interested in plugging into and knowing, staying on the pulse of what's happening with film and creative industries, we welcome you to sign up there. What we're really excited about is that we're continuing to actively grow that toolbox, and that really rolls really nicely into the Detroit Film Initiative. Before I talk about the Detroit Film Initiative, I just want to explain to everyone sort of our philosophical shift. With incentives, our focus was projects. How do we land as many projects as possible? And the main tool in our toolbox was incentives. And it's what's going on. That's a national trend. There are 30 to 40 states that have incentives, but quite frankly, that's not necessarily reliable. We find with our peer film commissioners that one year a state may have incentives, the next year they might not. So how do we in Michigan position ourselves for the next 10 to 20 years so that local filmmakers have a reliable, sustainable way to make their films? So our answer is public-private partnerships. We are working to help communities like Detroit package themselves as great places for creatives to live, work, and play. And in terms of the work part, that's where the Detroit Film Initiative really plugs in nicely. How do we help Detroit become business-friendly, specifically to filmmakers and creatives? And with that, I would just love to dive into a little story about Detroiters. Detroiters came to the state, and their pilot leveraged incentives. And fortunately, the pilot did so well that season 1 was greenlit. So they called our office and said, hey, we're ready to shoot season 1 in Detroit. We're so happy to come back. We had a great production experience, and we're looking to come back. We had to notify them that at that point, incentives was no longer a part of our toolbox, but we were fortunate enough to have such great partners at the mayor's office that we said, give us a minute. And we hopped on the phone with the mayor's office, and in partnership with the mayor's office and the private sector, we developed an enticement package in a partnership called the Detroit Film Initiative to make the business case to Comedy Central and Detroiters that we would make sure that Detroit was very business-friendly in terms of hosting their production for season 1, and fortunately, we have them here for season 2 as well, and we're looking forward to a season 3. So and while we have all these parties on the line, we just really want to thank the mayor's office as well as Detroit's vendors that assisted with being very film-friendly with the production, and we look forward to growing the Detroit Film Initiative.
Great. Thanks, Selam. That is a great segue to move to our next panelist, Adrian, who works in the mayor's office. Adrian, if I'm interested in filming in Detroit, how do I make the DFI work for me?
So the first thing is that you'd go to the DFO at detroitmi.gov, and you would turn in your project. It would be vetted by Linda Vineyard and her team. And then once it became something that says, wow, this is something that we can really champion here, and it depicts Detroit in the way we want it to depict, because historically we've seen so many productions come here and they want to shoot ruin porn and all that kind of, different, that's how they see Detroit. We want to see Detroit in a positive way. So they would vet it, and then they would bring it to me and say, can you take a look at that? And we'd probably reach out to the production. But we ask, there's certain, we're going to treat everyone wonderfully, absolutely, because really we've streamlined services. We want productions to really be able to focus on making their production rather than the red tape or bureaucracy of a city. And I think we've done that. I think the film office is running very lean, and customer service is for all city departments, hopefully. But at the same time, we ask that you shoot 75% of your production here. We ask that you hire local folks that live in the neighborhoods, that you mentor, our kids that are future storytellers or production or whatever they're looking to do. And then work with local businesses that are partners of ours that will give you cost savings. So there's all sorts of different, we'll tailor. We'll take line item per line item, and we'll see where can we save you. So it's pretty tailored to each production, depending on what production is, we're looking at the time.
Great. So you have a lot to offer the film industry, and then tell me a little bit about the other side. What does that bring to Detroit?
In terms of the...
in terms of how it would help our city.
So as you see, in terms of helping our city, you're hiring local businesses, whether it's craft services, whether it's accommodations, hotels, whether it's anything that falls in the paint store. You can go to there's a local paint store that says, gosh, when we had film here, that was our business tripled. But it's really about us is the human interest. There's a lot of young youth in our neighborhoods that we're really championing as an administration, because we feel this is the future of our city. That unless they can feel it, touch it, they can't dream it. So we had Grow Detroit's Young Talent, where we put 8,500 young students, Detroiters, to work. And last year was the first film track. Detroiters had 15 of them. And if you follow up with them today in their stories, some of them have, they've moved on to other productions. They've, specialized. They changed their career paths. They've gone to college based on their experience with Detroiters. So again, it's that really creating something that everyone benefits. And then what's the leave behind? If a production comes in, what are they leaving? What kind of legacy are they leaving here? Is it going to be multi-year? Is it going to be a one-time deal? But we've had that even with, Annapurna in Detroit that just shot here. We felt that if we're going to work with you, we're going to tell a very important story that needs to be told. What's the leave behind that we can grow as a city based on the story you're telling?
Right. I know when we spoke before, you mentioned that you are still open to new ideas, different ways to broaden the program. If somebody had ideas, how would they best bring those to you?
I would like to give my cell phone out. I can give my email out. It's tonona@detroitmi.gov. If you have questions specifically about the DFI, you can reach out to me. But otherwise, we ask everybody to go right to the film office. It's set up for using the front door. It works, and they just do a fantastic job there. So Linda or Bethany are on the line. They'll be able to answer questions. But we're always looking for new partners. We're always looking. I always say that we're always pursuing what you don't know that you don't know. So again, the sky is the limit. This is a document, and Selam and I talk about this as well as George and Sultan, that the sky is the limit with this. It's something new that hasn't been done, and we have to be proactive in a post-incentive climate.
Yeah. I know one of the other things you mentioned to me, and I loved it, you said, we get it done. We're about to talk to George on Detroiters. I wondered, though, before we left you, Adrian, if you could tell me a story about getting it done.
It's not really so much a story, because we hope to do this every day, and I think our mayor is a testament to this. But our motto is get them to the finish line, and that's what it's all about. Private sector, and I'm talking on customer service right now. If you don't get your customer to the private sector, your business doesn't thrive. Government, we feel the same way. As we want to get, as we do, it's not our time, it's our customers' time, and we want to get them to the finish line in order to pursue whatever business they have in the city.
Thank you, Adrian. So we also have George with us, who is actually on set right now for Detroiters. George, are you there? Hey.
I'm here.
I know Detroiters, and you specifically, have had a great experience working with the city of Detroit. Can you tell us how, as a location scout and manager, you bring films to Detroit? And what makes this an appealing place
All right.
for
So, after Selam and Adrian were talking, it kind of, got me thinking about other things that I think are so important. But I also want to thank Adrian. 2 of those GROW students that were last year are with me on set today. So I was staring at them this morning.
That is awesome.
So I appreciate it. I appreciate that.
Sustainability, George. Nice job.
Well, what I try to do is, after a director or producer has heard about Detroit, even post incentives, and they've said, we're thinking about bringing a show here, I like to drive them around, show them why the script would be great for here, but more importantly, and I think this is the element that sometimes gets overlooked in post-incentive world, and I have it on the slide here, is that Detroit is an economical place to film regardless of incentives, right? So if somebody says to me, well, we're thinking about taking it to Chicago, it has 29% back, I can show them numbers to make that happen here without the 29% back, just because the prices are so much different on a lot of the things that we're dealing with, especially in the locations world. If you're talking about production offices, parking on the day-to-day. In Chicago, where I worked, you'd spend $30 to $40 a car, where here I can get a parking lot for, $300, $400, $500 in many cases. So if you can make the numbers work, I think anybody would be interested in filming here because, as Selam talked about, the diversity in locations that we have. A couple of the ones that were glaring that we lost because of this is, I was working on The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio, and they sent me for a month up in the UP scouting the most pristine areas of Michigan. It was one of my most memorable jobs. And, we lost the incentive right when they were thinking about coming here, and we didn't have time to try to organize and make it happen for them because clearly when they have a ticking clock to get the production done, there's nothing stopping the train. You just got to, they had to move somewhere else. And I was working on a Brad Pitt, Edward Norton piece, and they were talking about just the wonderful areas of Michigan. I was scouting that, and that got derailed because of it. But I think that what I wanted to touch on is that production directory that Selam talked about. If it was on steroids, and it really encompassed buildings that could be production offices, areas that are very open to filming, whether it's cities or just certain parts of a city that you can say, this you can work on, these are parameters, and these sheets or this production guide or this website can get into the hands of these producers before they've made that decision, just like they're making that calculation. Do I go to New Mexico? Do I go to Atlanta? If we can be in that ballpark, regardless of incentives, I think we have a chance. It's just they don't know that information. And it gets a lot of splash when they find out, oh, so-and-so state is offering an incentive. Well, that's the ear. So what can we do here to make that happen? So I'll just leave that as a question for the smarter people. But I wanted to talk about how and why filming in Detroit helps Michigan, and I gave a couple presentations on this, but most importantly, when you think about what Paris looks like or what England looks like, most people haven't been to these places. You know them because you saw them in a movie, you saw them on a TV show, and it's not a coincidence that the most filmed place in the world happens to be the most visited place in the world, which is France. And it's not by coincidence that Detroit, when you had 200 movies here shooting in 2008, all of a sudden Detroit, in the middle of a recession, became the coolest place to be. When you have this should be, in my opinion, instead of dueling dollars where this can help, like why this could be an extension of pure Michigan, because when I have 3 Airbnbs here in Detroit. I cannot tell you how many people said, oh, I saw it on this movie. We want to go check that out. Do you know where that's at? Even though they don't even know I'm a locations person. Or now all of a sudden it became a tourist destination because the tourists that come from France or come from, Australia, they've already been to LA. They've already been to New York. Now they want to go see Detroit. They want to go see Chicago. And it's all because of images that they've seen that they wanted. So we are part of this, and that's part of the community that exists in film that we are all working together as far as businesses. They say, what's the advantage of me giving a 10% or 20% to the show? Well, that is just encouraging more people to want to come here. And, you know, I know there was a little bit of a reputation of like, well, there's these horror movies or apocalyptic movies. Those also help. You know, The Godfather is one of my favorite movies. It doesn't have the most tremendous positive image of it, but as a memory of a watching experience for me, and if I want to go visit a city that you know, film was shot at, The Untouchables or whatever it happens to be, you know, that in the long run is also helpful, even though, you know, being on Detroiters is wonderful because we have a chance to showcase Detroit for all the positive beauty that it has, and we have two creators that are from here that want nothing more than to give it all to make people in the world see Detroit in a super positive light. And I want to conclude on that basically translates into dollars. You know, when M&M did the Chrysler ad, we were in a recession. Chrysler was in that ad changed the way people thought about a Chrysler. I mean, there is data that suggests that they increased their sales by 200-300%, and it still affects the brand. Having this, when at the time they were very concerned, like M&M and language, and do we really associate them with Chrysler? And you know, all of these things can coexist if they're done with passion and with heart and with a community. One more thing, I know my time is a little limited here, but one more thing that I think is essential to all of this is while we were having films here and while we still have films here, it was so easy to convince kids that were graduating to stick around town. I, like many, as soon as I graduated from Michigan State in 2000, I left. I was working in Chicago making films. I came back with the incentive. I had 2 babies in Detroit. I bought 3 homes in Detroit. And there was between 50 and 75 kids that I pulled from University of Michigan, Michigan State, Wayne State, MPI, Oakland University that now are full-time union members. How can we keep them here? So, you know, when we're putting these directories together, when we're talking to the businesses, we should talk about the all-encompassing good that even making a silly music video or, you know, what we think is a slapstick comedy has real impact, and it can affect thousands and thousands of people, not to mention, you know, the union rates that people get, and we're bringing old people that are from Detroit that have been working in Atlanta back here, back to their families because of it. You know, it's much bigger than we all kind of give it credit to, I think.
Great. Thank you so much, George, for your perspective. We appreciate that. Now we're going to talk to Sultan. He's an independent filmmaker. He's touched on it all in his time making movies here in Detroit, both as a filmmaker, working with vendors. And Sultan, I'd love to hear the advice you have to offer to both sides of our audience, both the artists and the vendors.
Sure. You'll probably hear some overlap with what some of the other folks that we've all worked together before. But I mean, for me, I think as a independent filmmaker and I've worked in Detroit, LA, and any place you go, you're always going to have storytellers, and they're going to be operating at multiple levels. And so I think because there was such sort of loud political hoopla around the film incentive, we got focused on the word film being associated with the Hollywood, blockbusters. But for most places, most cities in America, as well as around the country, there's always a vibrant film community completely outside and separate from that sort of Hollywood model. And so I kind of came up through that. My first feature in Detroit in 2005, before there was any talk of an incentive. Then my second in 2006, and we were just there was a few other people making films. There was our motivation wasn't necessarily because of how much it would cost. We were filmmakers from Detroit, and we wanted to tell stories where we lived, which is one of the big motivating factors for many filmmakers in lots of cities, from Asheville, North Carolina, Atlanta, New York, et cetera. And so I was never, the incentive element of the Michigan filmmaking never really impacted my decision as a Michigan filmmaker, because I was, making films before. I made 3 films that got the film incentive, or 2 films and 1 TV show. And then now I'm planning another. after the incentive. So there's always going to be filmmakers operating, in Michigan. And so I think the more we can develop community, the better off we'll be. People always ask me how to get started or how to sort of develop a career. And the only answer is just meet people. I think Michigan has a little bit of a sort of working class mentality when it comes to things that is great when you're on set and doing the hard digging in work. But when it comes to like networking and sort of building the brand that is you, which is what your life is when you're a freelance or independent filmmaker, we're not that sort of. I don't think we're as other places. I think we feel like there's this sort of fakeness associated with like trying to meet specific people or trying to meet strategically. And I think in order for us to develop a healthy community, we just need to get over that. For me, I've always just been down to meet anybody, to try to work and volunteer on other people's sets, and I believe in the law of return. And so if you give and you put out good things, then good things will come back your way. So I'm always trying to help someone else out or get involved or start something in the hope that someone else will be there to help when I'm trying to start something. And so a lot of
I know when we spoke too, you had some really great advice for vendors, how to communicate with filmmakers, learn the language, learn how the business works. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think for vendors, film time is money in the film industry, and anything that's time because it's complicated or difficult is less inviting because it ultimately is going to cost us more money. And so I think a lot of people, I just saw a question about shooting in like a dance space or a dance studio in Farmington Hills on the web chat. A lot of people, they want to be involved, but they don't know how to sort of market themselves. And I always tell people, like, learn how our industry works. I always tell people, watch Project Greenlight. It's a great example of some of the that pop up on film sets, especially season 1. We need to know, like, how much power you have. Are you near a railroad track? Are you near a hospital? Like, there are all these things that are sort of as part of the film culture that vendors need to know about because it makes it easier for us to work with you. Reputation is also really big. So in film, they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and to a certain degree that's true because if I've worked with a caterer and they know that our times are going to change regularly, or they know what a call time is, we might, or what our turnaround time is. If we start shooting at 7 a.m. on Monday, then we need at least 12 hours between the time that we finish shooting on Monday to when we start shooting on Tuesday. And so if you're a caterer and originally we were planning to, start at 7 a.m., but we went late Monday night, on Tuesday we're going to move our call time back. Like, if people understand the things and they're flexible and they're willing to deal with you and be able to change as you find things out, then that makes it easier to work with them.
Fantastic. Thanks for your guidance on that. So we've had a lot of questions coming in from our audience, and let's take this last portion of the webinar to get to some of those questions. Our first question is regarding the resource guide that, Selam, you were speaking about at the beginning of the webinar. The question says, regarding the resource guide, how are people vetted? How do we know that people do what they say they do? So tell us a little bit about that, how that resource guide is proofed or approved before it goes out there.
Sure. So the production directory is again, it's a two-way street. It's a database where crew and vendors can register themselves for free. And the idea is that as filmmakers come into town from out of state or local filmmakers need to staff up or find goods and services, they can look on that free registry or that free database to find good leads. We at the office, and I should mention that again is available at www.michiganfilmoffice.org. We require that those that are looking to register submit resume and information to back up you know, that resonates, and we do our own due diligence and research to verify to the best of our ability that the productions that they worked on, that they actually did do that. Now, I should say, again, it's a free registry, and we definitely get a lot of entries, so we do our best to vet, but we also make sure that we communicate that the filmmaker should certainly do their own due diligence. So we provide the contact information. We require those who are entering to upload their credentials and background information, but it really is on the filmmaker to do their due diligence, do an interview, just like you would in any other industry before you hire. And so that's our work on the production directory. It's always a work in progress, and we're working to do our best in that vein.
So there's a great question, and I think it's probably something a few listeners might be confused about. This particular person owns space in Farmington Hills, so he or she can be part of the directory. It's not solely for Detroit businesses.
Correct. So the production directory covers the entire state of Michigan, and once you log on, you can select the region that your business operates in. Same thing with the locations directory. You can select what region that location is located in. So to answer your question, yes, it covers the entire state, and you can, specific to the Detroit Film Initiative or the Detroit area, you can register in the production directory at the state level, even if you're not necessarily in Detroit proper and a part of the Detroit Film Initiative.
Okay, so the DFI is purely Detroit. The registry is for the entire state, but when you're in the registry, you can tag yourself as Detroit so you can get the layover needed.
Absolutely.
A lot of interest in these questions about the directory. We have one, I'm a caterer. How do I get registered to service film crews? Is getting registered part of being in your directory?
Yes. So again, go to the website. The instructions are, you click on the production directory, and it'll give you options. First, you need to identify yourself as a crew member or as a vendor, and from there, it'll walk you through the process to register within the database. And then you would receive, you're asked to upload information, and from there, you'll receive a follow-up from our office if there are any questions that we may have, if there's anything that we need help verifying, again, those due diligence questions that we do from our end. And then from there, you're uploaded to the directory, and that is a primary tool that we use for filmmakers. We direct them there, again, to provide leads for them when they want to staff up or when they're looking for services like catering.
Fantastic. So it sounds like if you are a business or landowner and you wonder, should I try to be in this directory, the answer is go to the website.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so I think we've got that pretty well covered. I've got a question for George. It says, how can a Detroit-based writer submit an episode script for Detroiters?
Well, that's not really my expertise, and I have this question a couple times, but it seems like in this day and age they run through agents. So a writer would have to be associated with an agency, and that agency would submit, some type of a script. This particular show, because it has such ties with Saturday Night Live, and the boys were writers for Saturday Night Live, they have a writing team that they've been working with. So, I apologize. I wish I had a better answer. It's just not my area.
No, I think that's a great answer. Agent is a solid start. Yeah,
agent is key. Nobody can just take one unsolicited. If I were to get one and I were to present it to somebody, it would kind of be a faux pas. I really couldn't do it, So it has to go through the proper channel.
No, that is a good and solid answer. Thank you, George.
Mm-hmm.
Selam actually has something to add to that.
Yeah, one of the things that's in development, and from the film office's perspective, is we are really looking to reframe the artist as an entrepreneur. So we are looking to, as I said earlier, build infrastructure around how do we help you launch your product, which is in this case your film. And so we are working to provide educational opportunities that will help in terms of professional development to help those who are new to the industry find out information like once you have an idea, how do you take your idea to script and to execution of an actual film, and how do we facilitate networking to help get you there. So that is part of actively rebuilding our toolbox here at the film office. So stay tuned.
Fantastic, thank you. This question is for Adrian. Can there be discounts for use of government buildings or landmark buildings as it stands now?
In terms of government buildings, with the land bank, with what the city owns, there's definitely, we've had that conversation. We have gotten some folks in productions that are part of DFI. We have gotten them into discounted rates. So it will apply depending on the production and how closely we're working with you. But there's always buildings that are available. We've streamlined a process through our DBA, Detroit Building Authority, to get productions, buildings, and do short-term leases.
And if somebody wanted to do that, reach out to the DFI through the website?
Same thing. It would be the same process. The entry is the front door, and that should work for you. And then once that's vetted, then the team will disseminate the information and get a hold of me, and then we'll reach out to you.
Great. Sultan, I think this is a great question for you because I know you've done this yourself. The question is, how do I get funding for my films?
That is a tough, long, complicated question. In short, and it might sound weird, but increase your network to include people who have money and support the art. I started out with my first project with a tiny little budget, and then once you sort of break into communities, and there are communities in Metro Detroit. We've had some of our funded projects right in the metro region. One of them owns a bunch of nursing homes out in Brighton, and he put up a couple $100,000 for a film. We met him at an art gallery, so I often joke with one, and I call him he's like a gold digger, but for like old white men with money. He's a young black guy. But we hang out at art galleries because who's going to go to a nice art gallery? People who like art and who have money. We go to exhibitions. We go to the opera. Go to events that have people who are showing that they have appreciation for what you like to do. There's also a ton of crowdfunding sites. You can do Kickstarter. There's Indiegogo, a great one called Seed and Spark. If you're a filmmaker, you should definitely check that one out as well because it has a really cool model for filmmaking.
And can I add to this?
Oh, please do.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, that always comes up, and Sultan, you're 100% right about just seeking people out, not being afraid to ask when you believe. The people that really succeed are so passionate about their project, they just ask and ask until they get it. But another point is that if you can make something very small to showcase your talent and you have something to display, when you're first starting out and you don't have something other than an idea and a piece of paper, that might be the hardest way to convince somebody. So I would use whatever limited resources to create something as small as it can be, but something that you can actually visually show somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, actually, Sultan, I was just going to pass that right back over to you because when we spoke before, you had so much great information about that, about, networking with U of M people and networking with cousins and doing weddings that you necessarily didn't want to do, but then you had the experience and you had the context. So can you talk to us a little bit about that because I know you're an expert.
There's no excuse nowadays to not be able to shoot something. There was a feature film called Tangerine. It's on Netflix that was shot on an iPhone 6, the whole entire movie. They had good audio, but you can make a reel with just about any phone camera, and they're pretty readily available. Every film school has resources. I shot my first 2 features basically utilizing resources at the school and building community with a bunch of other people who are also at film school. And so another thing, so much in the film industry is sort of quid pro quo. Like you do favors for others so that they'll do favors for you, and time or energy or resources to give to people, then, like I said, a lot of times that can come back. So I used to shoot, 5 really cheap nonprofit videos. I had a tiny little camera, but I knew how to get the most out of my camera, making sure I shot a lot of daylight scenes and, things like that, because I didn't have a full lighting kit. And I would shoot videos to people who I knew that they had folks that they would know, and I just tell them, okay, I'll do this wedding video, or I'll do this video for your nonprofit, but if you have a friend who's got a company and there's, then get in touch with me and let me know. Like, I want to be the first person who gets a call, Another thing that Michigan people don't really use is LinkedIn. Like, you can connect to all of these people through LinkedIn and see who works where and how long they've been working there to, build your network support.
Yeah, Sultan, this is the Film and Digital Media Office. If I could echo what George and Sultan are talking about, the hustle of filmmaking, we are really looking to, at the film office, open up the gig economy for filmmakers. We all recognize that all industries need storytellers. Even at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, we have a videographer. So when you're talking government, when you're talking private sector, we all need storytellers to help sell our services and our goods. So don't limit yourself to only your passion projects. Do look for those opportunities to use your creativity for corporate and industrial applications. And we're working at the film office to, again, build that infrastructure to help traditional businesses, traditional vendors like many who are on the webinar today, help promote and market their products and services, and filmmakers are exactly the type of talent they need to do that. So we look forward to building those partnerships and opening up that gig economy.
Yes, if you're taking notes at home, LinkedIn, LinkedIn, LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah, and if I can make one final note real quick, just show up to stuff. We had last year at the Cinetopia Film Festival, we always struggle to get people to show up, and then people always ask, how can I get money for a film? Last year we had a guy, he had an indie feature that his wife had actually done, and then this year he won an Oscar for La La Land, and he's the executive producer. He did a panel and hardly no one showed up, and then a year later he wins an Oscar. So it's like, if you want to get money, a film, go to places where there are people who put up money for films, and one of them is Cinetopia Film Festival, and event that Cinetopia does. We do Cinetopia for events all year, and any person that we bring in is usually connected to somebody who's made or financed a film, and that's the whole reason that they're coming. And so I feel like people expect there to be this easy answer to that. It's a marathon hustle you gotta be committed to.
Great answer, thank you. The next question for Adrian. Do web-based talk shows need to complete a permit application from the Detroit Film Office, even if they are working with a shoestring budget and a small crew at a business location that has been gifted to them?
No, I think if you're using BRoll for the Spirit Plaza or the Spirit Statue or the Joe Louis Fist, yes, absolutely, you would contact the office and go through the protocol. But if you're doing something in a private, indoors, in a private space, I don't think you would need anything.
Well, I can help here. That's my job.
Okay. Oh. Well, there it is.
So,
right.
So if you're on private property, you clearly don't have to put in a permit. As soon as you're on the street, there are guidelines for student projects. There's guidelines for documentaries. There are guidelines all the way around. So I would encourage putting a permit in, that there's no cost to the permit, but if you're going to be filming on the streets, regardless of what you're doing, you should run through the proper channels to make sure that it's safe for everybody, and there's a lot of times where When you're working on a very shoestring budget, I understand it. I've been there. But that doesn't mean that it will forgive if you're doing things that are unsafe and could be unnecessary just by going through the proper channels. Everybody's here to try to make filming happen, and I think you're going to find that people are very accommodating and will help you make the project happen as long as they know, what you're doing.
Great. Thank you, George. Thanks for that great information. Hey, here's a question from our own Detroit Public TV. How can we best align to provide service studio, production truck to filmmakers and other producers? Who wants to
I can.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I think, again, this is on the flip side, but knowing everything that, as Sultan was saying about filmmakers and the networking, we also do most of the networking when we're looking for things. So getting the information out there of what you have available to the different producers that are in town, to the different UPMs that are in town, we are always on the hunt for either finding a good product from a company with a good reputation at a reasonable price. We have never solidified any deals to say we only work with this company on all services. So, using the production directory that Selam talked about, or just reaching out to any filmmakers, say, who do you know that does this? And I'll take any information. I sit with the producers and the directors. Some crew members do not realize, this is a little piece of secret information, but some crew members don't realize that the first person that I'm in the car with is the producer and the director, and they always ask me, who's a good set decorator? Who's a good production designer? And, depending on my experience I've had with these people, I will answer appropriately. So, it is all about your standing in the community, and we'd love any information we can get for anybody that has trucks or space or wrap party locations, whatever it is, and we'll take it.
Great. So I would tell Detroit Television to get in the directory.
Yeah, and can I add to that? Fred, a lot of it, like George is saying, is getting stuff out early. Like, a lot of times people don't think about film stuff in research-based approach, but you can easily look up any film. Anytime you hear of a film that was shooting or shot in Detroit, go on IMDb, find out who was the location scout or the production designer. Look them up on LinkedIn. See if you have a second connection or third connection, and then email that person. Hey, I saw that you're connected to George. Can you do an introduction? Then you can just send an email and say, hey, we have this. I have a dance studio that's this size in Farmington Hills. I have we have trucks that can be rented that aren't used, 3 weekends out of the something like that. So if you do that early, because people hit up all the time. I think a lot of people know that I know folks in a few different circles, and hey, I need a DP, I need an editor, I need a producer, Detroit, and then I'm going to go to the people who I've already been in some level of contact. And so if you find out who's been doing what, just have like a little one-pager that talks about either your company or your business or whatever, and just be like, hey, I saw that you did locations on Detroiters, just so you know, like, here's what I have, and then you can just send them an email. Maybe they'll circle back.
That's never a bother. That's never a bother. I'll take as much information as I can get.
Great. So let's move on to this question. For those young adults, and maybe even old adults, because we still like to do stuff, wanting to get local acting experience in film or television, what are some of the better ways to get considered for current and future opportunities here in Michigan?
So not to point to our famous tool by now is the production directory, but we do list agencies there, that talent agencies that we'd welcome you to look up. And in the production directory, we always encourage you to do your due diligence. Don't meet somebody in a dark alley at 11 o'clock at night to take your portrait photos. Do your due diligence, research that company before meeting, but that would be our recommendation, is start out with a talent agency. But I would also just make sure that you have things like your headshot together and that kind of deal. But your talent agency will really guide you as to next steps.
So the directory has agencies.
Correct.
And another question that kind of might go with this is people are asking, how do I get an agent? Would the directory, again, be a great resource? Do you have agents?
Yeah, we would, I would have to double check on individual agents. We certainly list talent agencies as companies, and if I would start there, and I think that's where you would get your best guidance.
Okay. That really is quite the tool in the toolbox.
Yes. It's our one-stop shop.
It's kind of like the Swiss Army knife. It
is, and it's we're always working on improving it, but it's something that's been really useful because, especially for filmmakers coming out of town or who may be new to the industry, they may not know Sultan or George or Adrian. So it's that first tool with a low barrier of entry that you can research, and from there do your follow-up. The phone numbers are listed there. Check IMDb, and then the more and more work you do, as you connect with our offices, you'll learn and network with people within the film community, build those personal relationships.
Selam, the next question is also for you. How does your office assist productions from a promotional standpoint?
Yeah, so we have a couple of promotional tools. We have a really great social media following. So we're on Twitter and on Facebook, and we welcome filmmakers who are launching a project or hosting a premiere to post on that website. I think our Facebook boasts 11,000 followers who are patrons of filmmaking and fans of filmmaking in Detroit. We also do allow folks to post their Kickstarter and crowdfunding campaigns on that website. We don't personally endorse any one project over another, but again, to the point of infrastructure, that's a public tool that allows you to promote your product, i.e. your film. We also have a newsletter that we welcome folks to sign up for on our website, www.michiganfilmoffice.org. It's a monthly newsletter, and as we hear stories about local talent on the rise, emerging talent, or local productions, we are happy to promote there as well.
Okay, one last thing while I have you still, Selam, and anybody can address this. A question, are there any reputable schools left in the area that teach aspects of film production?
So we have on our website, I think it's under the category of education or jobs, but we do list universities and institutions that have filmmaking programs. And so I would urge you to go to the website and check that out. But I open it up to the group if they have any other suggestions or have worked specifically with one program or another. I know Sultan has done a lot of work with U of M.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm biased. Go Blue. But
I gotta say go Green.
But yeah, actually the programs in Michigan are there are a lot of comprehensive programs, and they're all a little bit different. Some of them are housed more in from a journalism angle. Some of them are very Michigan is very sort of old school film in terms of writing programs, theory, history, production. There are other programs like MPI. They do all around. That's Motion Picture Institute. They're out in Troy. They do a great all-around production focus. So it's really important to know sort of where you think you'd like to end up if you want to go more into a sort of journalism angle, which would prepare you more for a Fox 2 or something type job versus independent filmmaking versus documentary filmmaking, and so versus industry. Better places to learn about stuff are actually ad agencies locally, because they do a lot of production with commercials and stuff. So yeah, so you can you should what style you want to end up in, then find the program that suits it. But there's Michigan State, Wayne State, Oakland. They all have really great film programs.
Great, thank you. Adrian, this next question is for you. How do you envision the Detroit Film Initiative evolving and or expanding?
I think we're looking for new partners every day. So, from this webinar, from word of mouth, from from Lansing with Selam, and even Selam taking this to certain film festivals, and folks reaching out to us. And like I said, it's something that it's a living, breathing organism within the organization that just it's never ending. We're always looking for partners, new businesses that come in. So we're engaging everyone always.
Great.
Could I add to that? As we pointed out at the beginning of the webinar, our work at the state level is really to be an agent for those local communities and sell them as great places to live, work, play. So in the work sphere, the more that we can, again, package in a really organized way how easy it is to do business with the city, as well as how competitive our rates are with local vendors, the easier it is to sell Michigan. We really look at filmmakers as folks that are constantly in site selection mode, so they are looking for the best place to do business in terms of ease of permitting and that kind of deal, which Adrian and his team at the mayor's office have done a great job in building. But with so many vendors on the call, we really welcome you to stay tuned to our film office. I know we're going to have email addresses here. We welcome you to stay tuned to opportunities to be a part of the DFI, and just very specifically, the more vendors can be proactive about how film-friendly they are in terms of providing excellent customer service, making sure that they are working with producers to turn around answers to questions they may have about their location or about their costs as soon as possible. The more they're willing to provide discounted rates to attract those productions to town and help grow the local filmmaking industry, the better. So our office is working with the mayor's office to take DFI to the next level and hopefully build a club of local vendors that are proclaiming they are film friendly. In exchange for a slice of the film business, they're offering really great customer service and discounted rates. So that's, I would say, DFI 2.0 coming to Detroit.
Awesome. Well, we are getting short on time, and we have time for just one more question. I'm going to put it out there to whoever wants to answer it. As an independent filmmaker already in Southeast Detroit, what's being done for us? I've had people from Ohio and Illinois ask me to come there to shoot my productions, as they have incentives to help us maximize budgets. So what would you tell this independent filmmaker?
I would say give me a call personally, because this is great that we're able to have someone here in the city that wants to reach out. So again, my email, I will come see you personally.
All right. So Harvey can look for that. You can email Adrian, and he will get back with you, Harley. All right. That's all the time we have today. I thought this was a great discussion, and I want to thank our panelists so much for your time and your passion about this subject, Sultan, George, Adrian, and Selam. And thank you to our sponsor, Pure Michigan Business Connect. This webinar will be available for download and review within the next 24 hours. Questions that we did not answer on the webinar today, we will try to get those handled and answers back to you also. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.